Courtney, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Simon.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us. You always said you'd never write a book.
It's not really a book, is it?
And you have written it, but over a period of many years.
Many years.
How would you describe it?
Well, in America, there's a major, you go into any Walmart or Kmart, there's scrapbook sections. And so I thought, my scrapbooks would be quite wild. And there's about two roomfuls at my manager's office, about this size, of what I didn't put in, but I want to sell the book. There's a lot in, but there's, I didn't want to write a kiss and tell so much. I went with classier, more small publishers because I knew the big publishers would push from, there's like a Lindsay Lohan email in there, but other than that, there's not too much celeb stuff.
It is a scrapbook, isn't it? I mean, in a way,
yeah.
Lots of
revealing scrapbook.
A revealing scrapbook. Lots of post-it notes. Lots of this is the stuff I have to do. All sellotaped together. I mean, it's a construction, a labour of love for someone.
Yeah, it was an editor that did it, but it's also got my juvenile records in it from when I was in what you guys call Borstal. It's got. I was trying to be a young actress. I tried out for what we in America is called the Mickey Mouse Club, which is where Christina Aguilera comes from and Britney Spears comes from and Justin Timberlake comes from, and I didn't make it. I was a little dark, a little moody, a little ahead of my time.
Yeah, because Mickey Mouse Club kind of likes happy, clappy people, really.
Yeah, I read a Sylvia Plath poem.
The most surprising thing...
Oh, my phone's going off. Oh, God, don't kick my ass. I'm sorry.
Just... That's fine.
All right, I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Thanks for switching it off. The most surprising thing, I think, in the whole book...
Yeah.
...is the Bay City Rollers double-page spread.
I don't know why they decided
Of all the bands that I expected you to really be into, there we have all your childhood
This is my
pictures.
rock and roll love letter to you.
So is that from when you were in New Zealand?
Yeah. And I ended up, in New Zealand because my mother became a citizen until I was emancipated. I was emancipated, which means you're an adult, a year early. So I was emancipated at 15. We had dual citizenship. So everyone accuses me of being an Anglophile, when in fact, for about 5 or 6 years of my life, I actually was a member of the British Commonwealth. And so, that counts. Yeah. And I went from in New Zealand, we didn't even have fitted sheets yet. I mean, they had 2 channels. And it was really hard to get things. So we'd get Sha Na Na, we'd get Top of the Pops.
Sha Na Na were pretty good.
But we'd get Top of the Pops 5 weeks later. I mean, really, really, Then we had our own bands down there. Like, there was a band called How's That? I remember I was really into How's That? Or Sherbet.
The song was How's That?
The song was called How's That?
They came from South Africa.
They were Australian, weren't they?
Oh, I think they were South Africa. Anyway, don't matter.
Anyway, they were huge.
Were they?
They were huge at Nelson Girls College. And Bowie, and so I ended up going from there to Eugene, Oregon, which is sort of a stoner hippie mecca. And I went to this junior high school with Led Zeppelin girls who just kicked my ass because I had tartan on the bottom of all of my pants.
The Bay City Rollers.
And this accent that wasn't affected. I wasn't being affected. I was in, what was I, in 7th grade. I wasn't affecting. It wasn't like, certain other people. It was the real thing. I had picked up an accent.
Is there any Bay City Rollers influence on your new record, do you think?
No. I'm afraid not.
There's no shang-a-lang.
No.
I think people will be amazed that you've kept all this stuff. I mean, you mentioned the Borstal report or the equivalent.
I think I stole those. I think we broke in the office and I stole a few of them because there's a lot more. I mean, I had huge files, and I think that I just must have stole these, and they came, and I got them somehow.
So we have in here the Hillcrest School of Oregon Student Review Committee report. Courtney has had a significant problem in her school program. She is a very intelligent young lady. She tends to overextend herself. She is very outspoken to the point of having or causing problems within the program.
Yeah.
And then on the next page, it's got a list of all the places that you stayed in.
Right. Foster homes and such.
Foster homes. And it looking at the dates as though you never stayed anywhere for more than 2 months.
No, I ran away all the time.
So what age were you at this time?
12. And then I whipped out my card and said, guess what? I've got a little trust fund. And I lied to them, and I said I'd been accepted at Trinity College in Dublin. And then at the age of 14, after about 2 years in this system, first I went to Japan and did some exotic dancing. And then I went to Liverpool. I went to Dublin first, and then I ended up in Liverpool living in Julian Cope's house.
Just on the stuff from New Zealand and the different foster homes where you stayed, and I think this is your writing on it, and you said that parents' whereabouts unknown.
Yeah, that's what it would say on a lot of the reports. I didn't manage to grab those when we broke into the office back in the day, but yeah, it would say parents' whereabouts unknown.
Do you know where they were now?
Different communes in New Zealand and Queensland for a while. I went to a boarding school here in the UK called Summerhill. There's a documentary about it now. It's very famous, very, very famous school. It was the first alternative school that you didn't have to go to. It was a educator named A.S. Neal who founded it, and I was the first expulsion from Summerhill as well.
Which, yeah. Now that kind of childhood's going to mess you up, isn't it? Really?
Nah.
Don't you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean.
How had your parents just left you then?
I was basically out of my mother's house by 8, and I didn't know my father at all. Which is, it's fine. It's Dickensian, I mean.
Well, it's not fine, is it?
It doesn't make me sad.
Must have made you sad at the time.
I think I grew up to have daddy issues with men, and I don't really know how to pick them. I would say that.
Still?
Oh my God, still. Yeah, still.
But from this very early period, you've got, and when you presumably you're living in Liverpool, letter you wrote to John Peel.
Oh yeah.
So how do you get hold of that? Because presumably you sent it to John Peel.
I sent him a letter, yeah, and he started playing our band. And I wrote a letter to 4AD, and I wrote letters to Steve Lamacq. Never wrote you.
No.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I think these people were slightly more influential at the time than I was at Radio Nottingham.
I wrote a guy named Paul Morley. I wrote Julie Burchill because I'd always read her. And
who replied out of all these people?
No one. But John Peel did start playing our record.
Did he give you a session, which is what you asked him for?
I ended up with a session like years later, but he played like the little cassette that I sent him.
But how is that letter now in the book? Was it because it was in a Peel archive, or did he send it back to you?
No, it was a draft.
Oh, right. Okay, so that's a version of it. And you've kept all this stuff all your life. You just must be a hoarder, presumably.
No, a lot of it's lost. I mean, like I saw New Order's second gig at the Hacienda, and I had pictures from that night. They're all gone. I had tons of pictures of like McCulloch. I had pictures of Bono and Edge and stuff from Windmill Studios, because I lived right near there, and when they were making October, I went to their studio a few times, and God, I've known those guys a long time. I'm old, man. And I mean, I had great pictures, and then one person had a letter I wrote to Elton John, and he wanted 50 grand for it. But it basically says in red crayon, "Dear Elton, one day we are going to be best friends, and I'm going to be a famous rock star and a movie star."
And that's true.
And we're really good friends.
Courtney is here. Courtney Love, The Diaries of Courtney Love. Dirty Blonde is the title. With a picture of you lying face down, you're not wearing anything, I don't think.
Butt naked.
On some petals. Is that, or is that some carpet? I can't quite see. Not that I'm looking too closely.
It's a carpet that I still have, actually. And it's a picture that Kurt Cobain took. And you know what's weird about this picture? Two things. One is that the editors had the run of the greatest photographers in the world. I've been photographed a lot, and they all picked this picture without knowing Kurt took it. And these pictures were taken for In Utero. He was taking the back cover of In Utero, and he did most of the art for it. And he did all the art for In Utero. And then the second part is he had this girlfriend before me named Tracy, and I found a picture of her on a couch just like this, which makes me think he was a bit of a butt man.
How much Kurt information did you want to include? How much were you asked to include?
Well, they didn't ask me to do, it's sort of I was the boss of this. So I included as much as I felt I wanted to. And I think there's enough there.
There's something that you scribble towards the end of the book. I don't understand this concept of publishing my diaries, you write. Oh, they didn't mind publishing his. I just stopped caring what people thought. Now I wish I could take it back, but I can't. So is that something that you've added on top of... Is that a recollection from a few years back, or is that something that you've added for this book?
No, I kind of changed my mind about that. I wrote that in rehab. I was sent down to rehab for 90 days.
A judge told you?
Judge almost sent me to jail, dude. And, our justice system is a little different than yours. I was kind of the Pete Doherty of my country for a while, and I'm not anymore. And, with Kurt's stuff, I held back as much as, he didn't have as much stuff, but I held back quite a bit. Many things in Kurt's stuff. I think Kurt would have wanted to be more understood and more comprehended and less canonized. So I felt completely comfortable about his diaries, and I felt comfortable about mine. But then at a certain point, they had typed everything, and there was too much sexually graphic stuff in it, and I wanted it to be something that my daughter could read, and that didn't have... there was too much name dropping in it, for one thing. It was just, and I felt like I'd become so misunderstood that, love me or hate me or whatever. Like, this is how I write lyrics. This has been my life. This is how I think. These have been my adventures. And this is a way to understand, a creative person turning crap into art, if you will, and I think in that way it's a bit of a guide and pretty interesting.
How much did rehab change the way you think about everything?
I was really lucky. I went to a really good rehab. It was a nice house.
What would have happened if you hadn't?
Well, basically, shall I be honest?
Sure.
Well, I could, basically the judge was like, no fancy rehabs. And he sent me to this really awful hospital. And it was really bad. And all of a sudden, there was a low brick wall, and some paparazzi shots started coming over the wall. And to this day, I think it was a friend who did that. But that hospital was like, we can't handle this. And they let me go to a nice rehab. I had no money at the time, and the woman who owned the rehab let me stay there for nothing. And it's like $150,000 rehab. It's one of those places. I had no money, and she let me stay there, and I was really overweight, and I went on this crazy diet and just wrote songs. And did yoga and chanted and did my Buddhism thing and just said, you know what? I've hit a certain age.
Presumably the rehab, as you said, you were ordered there by
a judge.
By the judge. That was that delayed reaction from Kurt's death? Just something that you hadn't worked it through at the time?
Yeah, if you remember, I don't know if you follow my career or not, Simon, but I went straight on tour after he died.
That's right.
Like, literally, my record.
Well, you were obliged. I mean, you'd signed the deal. Presumably they
Right.
would have let you out, but you thought...
Right. I mean, if I had said no, they would have, of course, not
They
made
would have
me.
forced you.
I don't think they would have forced me. But I wanted to. And so, no, but I was around such a bunch of naff people that, at the time, I mean, they were overwhelmed. They were incompetent. The people around Nirvana and around Hole at that time had never been around big records before. The Nirvana thing was a freak accident on a lot of levels to most of these people. It gave careers to people who didn't deserve careers. I mean, it made many people wealthy.
That, presumably, in retrospect, was the wrong thing to do. I mean,
It was the right thing for me. I think that the shows were cathartic. I think that I was lucky to have that outlet. But no one ever brought up psychiatry or bereavement group or anything, even religion or any kind of, there's no, and to this day, I think there's a real curse. His ashes remain above ground. They're in a bank about a block from my house in a safe deposit box because no cemetery in the city of Seattle will take his ashes. No one wants, despite all of his accomplishments, no one will take his ashes.
What did it? Oh, right. Could they be scattered somewhere? I mean, would that?
I think there should be a place to memorialize him. I don't want to scatter them somewhere. I don't think that would be right. I think the city of Seattle will eventually give in.
Thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Simon, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Courtney Love, The Diaries of Courtney Love is Dirty Blonde.